In this episode, I finally review the Nathema Conspiracy flashpoint. Hey everyone, Doug Jankowski with the Grizzled Geek, and I am finally getting around to my review of the Nathema Conspiracy conclusion to the Traitor story. We're looking at the story mode itself, not just the flashpoint in general, although I will review what my thoughts on that, but more specifically the story attached to it. So that's why I'm going to start with all these cutscenes and whatnot. We're going to roll through all of that. Overall, I enjoyed this flashpoint. There were a few things that didn't sit quite right with me. There were a few things that I wanted explained more. Overall, I liked the story. There were a few things that were pretty obvious. A few things that were not. Some interesting surprises. You finish off in a weird spot. But I guess I should say right off the bat, this will be a spoiler review. So if you have not done any of the Traitor storyline, definitely do those first. They begin with the Lost World, which takes you to Iocath and goes through that whole Republic versus Empire storyline, which then launches into the three-part Flashpoint story that reveals the Traitor, follows the Traitor, and then finally wraps up here in the Nathema Conspiracy. So that will be Crisis on Umbara, the Traitor amongst the Chiss, and then here the Nathema Conspiracy. So, again, I thought the story was well done overall. It was painfully obvious from the beginning that Theron was not actually a traitor. That he was doing this on purpose. That, that he was infiltrating the enemy. That was pretty much obvious right off the bat. I do want to say in this first part, if you haven't done the Nathema Conspiracy yet, I advise doing this in clockwise order. Start with the one that's at 1 o'clock and then work your way around in clockwise order. The story will make more sense that way. But overall, this takes you through old things. After this first little cutscene here of, a past conversation, Lana will say, hey, we swept for bugs for that, and we could never figure out how the enemy was hearing us. We're eventually going to find out that it was the Gemini droid that was part of the conspiracy that was listening in on you, but that's never explained any further. Once you find out that she can see and hear everything you're doing, there's no explanation of how she could know that stuff, how she's doing it. Now, it might be her connection to Zildrog, which we'll get to more later. But there are things happening where Zildrog is nowhere near, and yet she still knows what's going on. So that's a really kind of just glossed over, iffy part to the story. That's just like, okay, wait, this is not a good enough explanation of what's going on here. So, anyways, continuing on. We learned that there's this conspiracy that's been formed by this former Horizon guard who blames the Outlander for everything that's happened to Zakul, though he lists all of the reasons that it's not the Outlander's fault. He just kind of correlates the Outlander's arrival with all of these events happening, therefore it must be the Outlander's fault. I guess, as far as bad guy motivations go, it's not unheard of for that. But anyways, also something to keep in mind, as this clip here will show you, if you skip the chapters and just jump to this, because you can go to your ship and start this storyline, I think anytime after chapter 9, but if you, of the first Knights of the Fallen Empire, I think that's it. If you do that, the story will make assumptions for you. For example, here, the story made the assumption, despite the fact that I'm a purely good Jedi, I don't think I've ever made a dark side choice, it makes the assumption that I killed Senya. So If you don't want that, I mean, it doesn't impact you otherwise. I still have Senya as a follower. It just makes that some story assumptions for you. So be aware of that. Another cool thing is it brings in characters from your past. So I think this guy is the same for everybody because he's connected to Lana. The person that you just saw with the Knight of Zakul, that will be someone that your character has in some way offended. So you'll have that. It's not, obviously it's not always that person because you may not have always chosen to kill Senya. It'll be somebody else who has a beef with you. And then later on, and I'll point this out when we get to that part, you will once again see somebody else from your past brought in. So they did a little bit of effort to tailor it to specific characters. It's not a huge deal, but I appreciated the nod. I liked it. It made me feel like it was at least a little bit unique to my specific character. Now, does that mean that I would go and do it with all 8 character classes if I didn't have a reason to? I mean, I want to finish this storyline in general, but it's not something that makes me go, I want to replay this multiple times to see how it changes the interactions with that one particular character or whatever. That I don't think it's that big a deal. It actually doesn't seem like it's something that could happen. If you didn't kill Senya, there'll just be somebody different there. Whatever. Not a big deal. All right, so here we get the Gemini droid that's joined. She doesn't talk about being able to listen in on you. Theron will actually tell you that later. But she has an interesting motivation. So kind of cool. Reminiscent of Scorpio, except for, I would say, not as not altruistic. Scorpio's motivations were selfish, but you understood them because she wanted to be free. She wanted to discover where she came from. This one, you just get the idea of this. It's a recycled plot line that this person just doesn't have any better solution than being nihilistic in solving their problem. Whatever. All right. So overall, cool start to the story. I like the direction it was going. Once we get to Nathema proper, and I'm going to skip through most of it. I'm not going to show you all of the battles. You get there, you find out the forces return to the planet. You'll fight various creatures and a lot of either adepts that were left there from, I forget what they're called exactly, that were left there from Valkorion and his reign, as well as Knights of Zakul and fallen Scions who support this new conspiracy. But you fight a bunch of those. I believe they've actually changed the drop rate, because it used to be that there was a chance that anything on the planet would drop the new augment formulas. I went through this with this character all the way through to the final bad guy, doing the bonus bad guys, everything, and I didn't get a single one, including off the main bad guy, who's supposed to drop one automatically. However, I did get a droid operator's license, so that may be an either or thing as far as rewards go. So anyways, I hope they didn't change the rate, and I just got unlucky here, so that when I play through it again with a different character, I'll get more of those drops, because I think I only got 4 of them so far. So I need to get more of them. But anyways, here's our first inclination that Theron, I mean, obviously the whole thing we just went through on the space station, but then we get an obvious, yes, Theron is a double agent here. Or he's may not be working for you, but he's working for you, not against you. All right, let's go ahead and move on then to Nathema proper and go ahead and launch into this. Again, I'm going to skip most of the fighting here. and just skip to where, the major scenes that further the story. Here we have the group meets up with Theron Shan, and he explains his treachery, his infiltration of the bad guys, and what he's found out as far as them going to awaken Zildrog. But once again, he brings up the point that the Gemini droid was listening in and recording everything they said, and he could never figure out why, or I should say he could never figure out how. And again, this is such a big plot point that's just dropped. You never get an explanation of how she's doing it. I think the implication is that it's Zildrog's doing. However, as we're going to see at the end of this cutscene, she's aware that they have arrived on Nathema and that it was Theron who led them there. But obviously, is Zildrog, the physical manifestation of Zildrog, which we'll get to here in a bit, is not here. So he's not available as a tool for her to have been listening in on. So how in the world did she do it? It's just a plot point they drop that they make such pains to point it out, and to, it's a huge factor in why Theron did what he did, yet it's not ever logically worked out or, explained in any way that, how she went about really getting this power over the Alliance. So it feels like it's just a, kind of Deus Ex Machina, that she just, I've got this ability, no need for an explanation of how it works, I just have it, and it allows me to have the information I need, which just feels like, for such a good storyline, it's lazy writing. All right, from this point on, I'm going to go ahead and just skip to boss fights and talk about those to a degree. So this first one is defeating a giant Vorclaw. There's a lot of little ones that you got to worry about. On the solo mode, I highly recommend that you make sure your companion is on heals. Even in veteran mode, it's good to have a healer, because it's there's a lot of damage being poured out here. Now, you'll notice that when I clicked the little panel there, it stunned the creature. As far as, the story mode, you can do that whenever you like. Just kite him around to all of the different, all the different towers. There's only 3 and they don't reset, so be aware of that. It doesn't really matter too much in the solo because this fight goes pretty quick. However, in veteran mode, you are better off waiting to click those until the creature enters this digging state, because he then becomes immune to damage and deals out a ton of damage you just kind of have to run away from. But if you pull him in there into here, you can stun him out of that digging and then, handle him much quicker and easier without him dealing out nearly as much damage. All right, here we have the bonus bosses. Nothing super interesting or amazing about these guys. There's just 2 of them. I've seen no indication of there being any reason to try and kill them at the same time. You're fine just focusing on one person, burning him down, and then moving on to the next one. At least in the story and veteran modes. Now, whether or not at the more difficult modes you need to spread out, I'm not really sure. I haven't tried those yet. Actually, this flashpoint is so long, I can't imagine doing the master mode. There's just not sufficient reward now for doing master modes, unless you're just trying to get the achievements that go with it. But otherwise, there's no real reason. All right, this is the, I want to say penultimate boss fight. There's actually a dual boss fight at the end. But this is the one that's personalized. So this is actually a character from the Sage's storyline on Voss. So she comes back with a personal grudge for your character. So that's kind of cool that you get that little tie-in to your character's previous story, and it's unique to each one. For example, for the smuggler, it's the daughter of the Void Wolf who you encounter here. In either case, they are the ones who apparently are in control of the droid you're going to fight in this fight. This is, I don't want to say the most difficult fight. It's probably the longest one, maybe with the exception of the Gemini droid. And it's got an interesting mechanic. I mean, it's really easy once you know the mechanic, but it's still fun. So this droid at 75%, at 50%, and at 25% will unleash, I think it's called decimation protocols. It's otherwise got some knockback attacks and stuff like that, but otherwise the big thing is the decimation protocol. You'll see all of these ads here who stun you with these little whips, but you should not have any problem breaking free of them. The big thing is don't kill them, or at least not all of them. Leave some alive for when you hit that decimation protocol, because they are surrounded by shields that you will be able to hide behind. So once it launches out decimation protocol, which I think I jumped here in this one too quickly, so I'm going to drag it back out into the middle. But here we go. This is the decimation protocols. It starts shooting everything. Now in solo, your companions are fine. It doesn't damage them. So you just need to get behind the shield and you're immune to the damage, or at least it's 95, 99% mitigated. I have noticed that if you're not perfectly behind the shield, you might take a point here and there, but not a lot. So, all right, there the whip went again, but you just break that and go. There's a long enough period between each of the decimation protocols and then the stuns that you don't have to worry about your things. Your release should be refreshed. So it's just rinse and repeat at this point. Nothing in the fight changes. You just be aware that at 25, every 25%, it's going to do these decimation protocols. And here, belatedly, I remembered, I could just drop down my phase walk. But that obviously won't charge in the amount of time that this should take you. So just one of the times be able to hop back and do that. But anyways, so it's an interesting fight. It's not, it's not earth shattering. But it's got an interesting mechanic that keeps you on your toes. It's not just tank and spank. I mean, it largely is, but not entirely. But all right. So once you complete this, then you head into the temple itself, and you pretty much, you're gonna finish off there's a lot more fighting knights and horizon guards and stuff like that. And then you'll come to the last two bosses, which are obviously, the horizon guard guy, he'll be the last one, and the Gemini droid, who are kind of the masterminds behind this conspiracy. They both have, fairly cool little quirks in their fights. So I will, as soon as we finish this guy off, we'll go ahead and move straight on to those two fights. And, we'll talk about, what the tactics, as well as finishing off the story and what I thought about how everything winds down. All right, and here we are in the final stretch. Let's take a look at the final two bosses as well as the end of the story. The first boss you're going to fight is the Gemini droid, and we're introduced here to Zildrog, and we find out that Zildrog's physical form is actually the gravestone. It's cool, I think. I wasn't sure how I felt about it at first, but the more I thought about it, and I like the fact that you now find out what that dark, I forget how they worded it, that that dark center to the gravestone, what it's all about. That's apparently, I think that's supposed to be Zildrog's consciousness, or where he's housed within it. We also have Zildrog, or the gravestone as Zildrog, destroying the Eternal Fleet. This was huge. At first I was like, wow, okay, you just undid everything the last, I don't know how much it was, 32 chapters or whatever it was of the Knights of Stories. But realistically, they had to do this to get us back to where we're going to be for the next expansion, where we're going to be back to Republic versus Empire. The Eternal Alliance had to be reduced down. So we had to get rid of the Eternal Fleet. So, all right, let's take a look at the boss fight here. You saw her big devastating attack. Basically, when you see those blue lines, you've kind of got to get out of the way. Then at a certain point, I think when you get her down to maybe 50%, she'll make duplicates of herself and tap into these thrones, they called it, power thrones. You got to go around and destroy all of those, and then destroy the duplicates afterwards. You also may have noticed that she spawns ads, so you got to take care of them too. On story mode, this isn't too tough, but veteran mode, you got to be a little quicker than I am here. I was, while I was recording, I was not entirely, I wasn't being super efficient with how I went about this. So you can see I've destroyed one of her duplicates. I actually kind of jumped the gun, forgot one of the thrones, so I'm going to have to go back to that here and destroy that throne, then go after this one. She's still shielded. I don't know why I was attacking her. There we go. All right. So then once you've got that done, then you can kind of go back to finishing her off and then go back to the regular fight. And then it's kind of rinse and repeat. She's got that line. Basically, when you see that line, you've got to break line of sight. And there you go. That finishes her off. Then the second one will be the Horizon Guard, who's the leader of the conspiracy, whose name I continually forget. It really wasn't that, because he came out of nowhere. He didn't really make an impact on me. So I forget his name all the time. Anyways, so the fight against him is not really all that tough. It's much easier than the fight against the Gemini droid. He has a knockback attack we'll see here. And then he'll have these ads that are, I guess, Zildrog, manifestations of Zildrog there to help him. You got to destroy those when they pop up. We'll see those here in a second. Zildrog refers to him as the servant of the dragon, tells him, hey, beat these guys up for me. But yeah, I mean, he's got so here's a knockback attack he has. You got to watch that. You'll also see a golden halo form around him here in a sec. That's going to be a knockback attack. So if you get someplace where he's not going to push you, don't get by the edge where he'll push you off, because he will. And then he's got, so there's the manifestation of Zildrog. He's got this little lightning attack. So you got to watch that. Otherwise, you can go kill the ads real quick and just watch the knockback. It's otherwise not real hard. There's another manifestation, so you got to get rid of that. And essentially, once those are gone and you've killed him, which I didn't realize he was down until I ran around, then you have to target Zildrog and burn him down, basically just avoiding those little blasts that come down. You just need to stay moving. You destroy Zildrog, which destroys not only this little area here, it's also going to destroy the gravestone here, which is Zildrog's physical form, I guess. As well as the throne, which I guess that was part of Zildrog. I'm not sure. But yeah, anyways, the throne that controlled the fleet that's no longer there, also gets destroyed. So your alliance is left with nothing eternal fleet-wise. And then you've got the option here of once you've defeated him, you get to just choose whether or not you're going to capture him, kill him, whatever you want to do. I'm a light side guy, so we'll see here. I'll choose the arrest him option. But anyways, that's so that was the finish of the fight. The fight's really easy, the second one, especially on story mode. There's a little more to it in the veteran modes. I haven't done it master mode. I don't think this flashpoint's worth doing on master mode. But anyways, so overall, I enjoyed this flashpoint. It's a fun flashpoint to do. It is long because it's a story, one of the story flashpoints. It's long, but it's fun. If I was just unlucky on my drops, it's still valuable to do that for the formulas for the schematics for the augments. So that's cool. But anyways, you get to talk to Lana and Theron to wrap things up. Basically, talk about the fact that, you know, hey, everything's changed now because there's no eternal fleet anymore. So you're not a power compared to the Republic or Empire. Theoretically, you've still got the forces that joined you from each faction, depending on what they decide to do. Time-wise, you may see that when the next expansion comes out, those forces have drizzled away back to where they came from. Maybe they've been offered amnesty or something like that. It's kind of hard to say where it's going to go from here. Here again, here's your first or your last, I guess, interaction with Theron, where he explains himself, asks to basically not for forgiveness exactly. He says, hey, I'm going to try and make it up to you. And you get the option of whether to keep him or not. And it's those two options, basically. It's you can say, yep, welcome back. Or you can say, nope, I'm not interested. The only option you have to kill Theron in this is to leave him to die from his wounds. Back on Nathema. So anyways, there we go, guys. That is my review of this. Overall, I think it was good. I think the story was pretty good. One disappointing part about the Gemini droid never being explained, but otherwise, I enjoyed it, and I think you guys will too. In this episode, Alright, well there we go, guys. There was finally my review of the Nathema Conspiracy. I hope you guys all enjoyed that. Like I said, I think it's really good. Thank you guys for tuning in very much. Please hit that like, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know what you thought. Share this video with a friend. Help us out in getting to our goal of 5,000 subscribers. Also, you can check the links out down below to support the channel. We've got an Amazon affiliate link, a Teespring store, as well as Patreon. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoy playing Star Wars: The Old Republic, and may the Force be with you.